One investor posted one sentence on X this week. As a result of that, Palantir's stock dropped 7% in one day. That investor is Michael Burry, the man who predicted the 2008 financial crash. So exactly who is he and what did he say? Michael Burry is the person behind the film The Big Short. And what makes him extraordinary is that in 2005, 3 years before the 2008 big crash, he started reading thousands of mortgage contracts that no one else had bothered to read. And what he found was that millions of Americans had been given home loans that they could not afford to pay back. The banks had bundled these bad loans together, given them fancy names and sold them to investors as safe products. That entire financial system was built on a lie. So Burry figured this out by doing the work that no one else was doing. He did not have inside information. He did not have any source. He just read the documents. And what he read terrified him. He then did something almost no one in history had ever done before. He invented a financial instrument to bet against the housing market. He went to the big banks and essentially said, I want to bet that these mortgage products are going to collapse. The banks laughed at him and took the money gladly because they thought he was insane. His own investors thought he'd lost his mind. They tried to pull their money out. His colleagues questioned him. And for 2 years, he looked completely wrong while the housing market continued to go up. That pressure was enormous on him. Then in 2008, the whole thing collapsed exactly as he predicted. He made $800 million US. The banks that laughed at him, they needed government bailouts to help them survive. And the lesson to be learned is that he wasn't right because he was smarter, but because he was willing to do the work that no one else did at that time, and then hold on to his conviction even when everyone else around him said that he was wrong. So that's why when he speaks now, people listen. And what he's saying right now is that Anthropic went from 9 billion to 30 billion US dollars in annual recurring revenue in a few months. Meanwhile, Palantir took years to reach 5 billion US dollars in revenue. He says businesses are moving towards easier, cheaper, more intuitive AI systems, and Palantir is being left behind. What is Palantir and why does it matter? Palantir is not a company that most people have heard of. Maybe you've heard all the hype around it as an investment. But what about the actual company? It's a company that's embedded in some of the most deeply powerful institutions on earth. The CIA, the military, the NHS in the UK, major banks, hospitals, and much, much more. Their software organizes and analyzes enormous amounts of sensitive data to help these organizations make decisions. And they've been doing this for around 20 years. But they only became profitable recently. Their stock recently went from almost nothing to $100 US on the back of the AI hype train. And it's the idea that they are perfectly positioned to be the operating system that governments and corporations run their AI systems on. The current stock price is around $131 US, down from highs, and is trading at 38 times projected to 2027 sales. That is an extremely high valuation, and it means the market has already priced in a lot of future potential gains. Burry's actual argument is he right? Burry's point is surgical. Palantir's business model relies on sending their own engineers, called forward deployed engineers, to physically live inside a client's office for months to set up and maintain the system. That's essentially a consulting business charging for human labor. It's expensive, it's slow, and it's difficult to scale. Meanwhile, Anthropic's Claude is a plug and play API. A company can simply integrate it in days without an engineer. And that's the threat, not that Palantir gets replaced overnight, but that new customers simply stop choosing them when there's a faster, cheaper option. The counter-argument is real though. Palantir doesn't just sell software. They sell security clearance, government trust built over 20 years, and the ability to handle the most classified data on Earth. I'm sure you've all seen this back and forth with the US government and Anthropic about antitrust and about not being labeled a security risk and not having that contract renewed and all this backwards and forwards, whilst Palantir is trusted by them. Anthropic got banned from the Pentagon earlier this year over a safety dispute, and Palantir simply stepped in to fill that gap. That's not a company being eaten for lunch. That's a company demonstrating its influence. So who's right? Burry is right that the business model has structural weaknesses. The bulls are right that the government moat around Palantir is real. Both things can be true at the same time. History and philosophy. And this is actually not a new debate. The exact same battle has played out in history before, and the outcome might surprise you. I bring this up because understanding what happened then is the clearest lens we have for understanding Palantir right now. In the late 1800s, America became transformed by railroads. Tracks were being laid everywhere, and everyone thought that the railroad companies were the most powerful businesses in the world. They controlled the movement of everything. They were the arteries of an entire economy. Then a young man from Ohio called John D. Rockefeller looked at this and saw something different. He didn't want to own the railroads. He wanted the oil. But he understood something that no one else had figured out yet. Whoever controls what flows through the infrastructure is more powerful than whoever built it. And so he bought them out one by one or destroyed them. His company, Standard Oil, became a monopoly, so powerful that the US government eventually had to break it up by law. Rockefeller then became the richest man in American history, not by building the railroad tracks, but by controlling what went through them. Now apply that to today. Palantir built the tracks, 20 years of secured government data infrastructures. Anthropic built the oil, the AI intelligence that everyone wants to run through those tracks. Burry is essentially saying Anthropic is the Rockefeller of this story. The one who controls what flows through the infrastructure eventually makes the infrastructure itself less valuable. AI is the new oil. But here's where that analogy breaks down, and this bit is really important. Rockefeller could negotiate with any railroad because the tracks were interchangeable. Government data infrastructure is not interchangeable. You can't just swap out Palantir's military systems for an AI API overnight. The security clearances, the trust systems, the 20 years of relationships, that's not just some pipe, that's a fortress. So the real question isn't necessarily whether Anthropic is better technology. It probably is. The question is better technology enough to displace a 20-year fortress? History says sometimes yes it is, sometimes no. And that's exactly why this particular stock, Palantir, is so divisive right now. The long-term investor take. So where does that leave you as an investor? That's the question I always come back to, because understanding a story is one thing and knowing what to do with your money is another. Is Palantir a long-term buy right now at 131 US dollars? My honest answer is no, not at this price, and here's why I think that. The valuation is the problem. Palantir is currently trading at 38 times its projected 2027 sales. Let me put that in plain English. That means the market has already put in place years of perfected execution. In this scenario, everything has to go perfectly. Government contracts have to grow, commercial clients have to buy, and Anthropic can't eat their lunch. And even then the stock market might not move that much because all of that good news is already baked into the price. You just don't need to be right. You need to be right and the market needs to agree with you, even more than it already does. And that's a much harder bet. Now compare that to Meta or Apple. Those companies have clear revenue flaws, billions of daily users who aren't going anywhere. Palantir is more binary. Either the government AI moat holds and this stock goes much higher, or Burry is right and it slowly bleeds out. You need to know which of those bets is more likely before you put your money in or before you keep it there. And if you're already holding Palantir, don't panic. One tweet from an investor is not a thesis. Burry has been short since September and the stock ran up significantly since then. He's been wrong on timing before, even when he's eventually right. If you believe in the AI government moat long term, then that 7% dip in the recent days changes nothing about that long-term projection. What I would do is say set a level in my head. If it breaks below $100, that's when I might reassess things more seriously. Above that, hold and watch the commercial real numbers. If it drops to 80 or below on continued bad news, that's when the risk-reward ratios start getting interesting. At 131 currently, the margin of safety is too thin for a fresh buy. So the number one thing I'm watching is commercial revenue growth. Palantir has been trying to diversify away from pure government contracts and into more regular businesses. If that accelerates, Burry's thesis weakens. If it stalls, he starts to look very correct again. And those are your signals. Burry did call the 2008 crash. He's been short on Palantir since September. The stock just dropped 7%, highly linked to his tweet. Is he right? Maybe. But remember, Palantir does have a 20-year government moat around it that a plug-and-play API can't replicate overnight. Watch those commercial revenue numbers, and that's where the story essentially gets decided.